Hi, my name is Sam, and I'm in $7 million of debt, and I'm happy about it. In this video, I'm going to tell you why. After shooting that intro, I can hear Dave Ramsey in the back of my head getting in his paid-for automobile and driving up in his paid-for clothes and everything, that all of his cash in his pocket come up to tell me, shake his finger at me and tell me that's not the way to get rich. The good news is Dave Ramsey is a very smart guy, and there's a lot of really smart guys that create a ton of equity and create a ton of wealth by properly and responsibly leveraging other people's money and going into debt to create equity and to create wealth. In this video, I'm going to explain how I'm in $7 million worth of debt and how much equity I have on top of that, and why I'm extremely comfortable having that much debt. So disclaimer here going across the bottom, I'm telling people that it is okay to get in debt, and it is okay to utilize the processes and the strategies that we use to scale quickly and to build wealth by utilizing other people's money. But it's the responsible leverage of debt. It's a responsible way to use other people's money to buy real estate. You can get in a lot of trouble if you don't know what you're doing and you're borrowing money. But if you're borrowing money the right way, and we're going to talk about that in this video and what that looks like, you can create a lot of money and grow a lot faster than paying cash for everything. I promise that. Dave Ramsey. Quick example of the power of leverage. If I want to own $100,000 worth of stock, I want to own that $100,000 worth of stock, and I want to reap the benefits of that $100,000 worth of stock, whatever those benefits are, growing in equity and then getting the dividends from it, I have to spend $100,000. If I want to own $100,000 in real estate, I can literally do that by spending $0. I currently right now have 121 residential rental doors plus a few storage facilities, and I have done all that using $0 of my own dollars. So I've responsibly leveraged debt. It's like having $11 million worth of stock. There's more than one way to become wealthy. Dave Ramsey has a great system that he's used because he got burned in the past by improperly leveraging debt. If you properly leverage debt and know what you're doing and follow rules and systems and buy property with equity that cash flows, which we'll get into, leveraging debt and using other people's money can skyrocket your net worth. Like I said earlier in this video, I have $7 million worth of debt, but I also have over $4 million worth of equity. So my rental portfolio is worth a little over $11 million, and I owe about $7 million on that. So you can look at it as your glass half empty or glass half full. You can look at it as he owes $7 million that he has to pay mortgages on every month. Or you can look at it as I have rental properties that are worth $11 million that I've used $0 of my own dollars to purchase by responsibly leveraging debt. And then I get to have $4 million of equity without using any of my own money, and that $7 million worth of debt is getting paid every single month by my renters plus cash flow. Even with this year being crazy, with all this craziness going on, we still are able to collect enough rent every month, more than enough rent every month to cover all of our expenses. So this was a great unwanted but necessary stress test for our business, and it really has proven that it's okay to leverage and use other people's money to buy real estate, which I'm going to get into what that looks like. It's okay to leverage and buy real estate as long as you're doing it the right way, there's enough equity, and there's cash flow. If you have all that mixed together, there's no reason why you shouldn't use other people's money to get wealthy. So I'm going to talk about leverage and what that means in real estate, but basically the definition of leverage, or the end purpose in leverage, is being able to move something that is heavier than you normally could use it. Like I can probably not lift, well maybe, like a 500-pound weight. But if I were to use a pulley system with levers and the proper leverage of weight, I could pull that, and probably have one, well hopefully we can have one pull up. I can pull something that's much heavier than I could use by properly using leverage. So let's
pull up a car.
I could pull up a lot of things, Yahtzee. So here's an example of leverage with real estate, and this is, hopefully this drives it home. This is a perfect real life example. So let's talk about my very first rental property. I bought my very first rental property for $78,000. I used a private money lender's money to purchase it. So I didn't use my money, so I'm leveraging somebody else's money and creating debt for myself. So I used $78,000 of Steve, as a private money lender's name at the time, still our private money lender. I used Steve's money to $78,000, and it needs $17,000 in repairs. So I needed $95,000 of Steve's money to take down this deal, not my money. So I borrowed the money from him, did the property, got it rented, refinanced. This is the BRRRR method, the BRRRR strategy, a video up here that goes into a lot more detail on it. So we don't want to get into that right now. But basically, I used $95,000 of Steve's money, so I owe Steve $95,000. So I didn't use any of my money, and I have a property that's ready to get rented. So I got it rented, utilized the BRRRR method, pulled out enough cash, and paid Steve back plus interest. So now I'm in $100,000 worth of debt. The property is worth $125,000. So I use debt and leverage other people's money, Steve in this case, to be all in the property, $100,000, and it's worth $125,000. That was 6 years ago. Now the property is worth $170,000 and I owe $80,000. So I have almost $100,000 in equity in one property, and I didn't use any of my own money because I utilized somebody else's money to purchase it, and then I refinance, and now I'm using a bank, which is debt. I'm using a bank to hold the note, and I'm paying them every single month, but the tenant is paying them. So kind of break that down is now I have almost $100,000 in equity and $80,000 in debt. So technically I have more equity than I have debt, so that little lever has gone the other way, which I have more equity than debt, but it took debt to get there, and the debt gets paid down by the renter. That's why it's important in a situation like this. You're not just getting equity on a car, or you're not just using debt or leverage on a car or something that doesn't produce income. You have to make sure to leverage properly on something that produces income and cash flows, that you have a safe amount of equity. That's what I would say, which would make it a good deal to utilize other people's money, is make sure there's enough equity in the deal. However much money you're using, you're gonna be able to get that back by selling it or refinancing at a bank, but there's equity on top of that, and you're positive that it's going to cash flow every single month. It's going to create cash enough to pay off the rest of that debt. Now, this way, I've been able to create 121 residential rental doors worth over $11 million in the past 6 years. I could not do that if I had to pay cash for everything. I would not have $4 million worth of equity if I didn't properly utilize debt and leverage debt. If I tried to pay everything in cash, I'd maybe have 5 or 6 properties and maybe a few $100,000 worth of equity, worth of net worth. But by utilizing other people's money and knowing my numbers and properly leveraging with equity and cash flow, I have a few million in real equity, and it just grows every single day because the tenants pay the note down and the properties go up in value. So that's kind of the beauty of properly leveraging debt. This is kind of just an example of what the BRRRR method does and what utilizing other people's money can do for you. You can create a ton of equity, a ton of value along with debt, but as long as your equity keeps going and your debt keeps going down, you should be just fine. So we've used zero of our own money to grow this rental portfolio. And in fact, we buy 200 houses a year. We don't use any of our own money for that either. So we definitely utilize other people's money, which technically is debt, to grow and to grow quickly. If you're not comfortable with that, that's okay. You can utilize other people's money and utilize debt a little bit, and then bring your own money to the table if that makes you feel better. If you sleep a little better at night knowing you have skin in the game, or you just have creating more equity by putting your cash away. But we wanted to grow quickly. We wanted to grow responsibly. And the only way to do that, if you don't have somebody giving you $10 million cash to do whatever you want with, is to utilize other people's money by property basis with the BRRRR method. So a lot of this depends on your risk tolerance and your long-term goals. If your long-term goal is just to own a handful of properties free and clear as quickly as possible, yeah, it probably makes sense to save up cash and to do that when the time's right. But if you want to grow quicker and you want to scale and you want to have more properties and honestly create wealth faster, then this might be right for you. Just make sure you know your numbers, make sure there's enough equity in it even after you utilize the money, make sure you have a proper way to give the money back to whoever you borrowed from it on the front end, and then also make sure it cash flows, make sure it's going to be bringing in enough cash to pay all expenses, mortgage plus all owning expenses, and then has some extra cash flow on top of it. If you do both those things, if there's enough equity and if the property cash flows, then there's a high likelihood that you'll be okay even if the market goes up and down. And I always suggest having somewhat of cash, a little slush fund on the side if things do really hit the fan and you have some extra money to tap into. Appreciate you watching this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, all that fun stuff. We put videos like this out all the time. We really would appreciate you to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you on the next one. So I needed $95,000 when I looked at this property to purchase it. He gave me the money. Now I'm gonna give him it back plus interest. Why am I burping so much?